Hello lovely people, welcome to my DraconAthon Wrap Up.
Dooby 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 doo. Dooby 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 Sophie Vlogs.
I had a really fun time taking part in this readathon. I have 4 books to talk about. I'm just going to dive into it. I foolishly do not have the list of prompts with me, so I'm going to have to say which books fulfill which prompts off the top of my head, and I'm really sorry about that. But let's just dive in. I'm going to kick things off with the book I read first. This is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lynn. I believe this was fulfilling the prompt, the geographical prompt of Asia. There was a prompt to do with sky or air, and there was a prompt to do with deities. This tells the story of Minli, who lives in the valley of the fruitless mountain. Her and her parents are very poor. They sort of struggle in the fields all day, and Minli, her father, tells her all of these amazing stories, including ones about the Old Man of the Moon. And one day, Minli decides that she's going to set off and she's going to find the Old Man of the Moon, and she's going to ask him how she can change her family's fortune. Along the way, she meets a little talking goldfish. She meets a dragon who can't fly. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought that this was an absolute masterpiece. Very much in that vein of sometimes things seem very simple, but you're able to see that so much work and effort went into crafting something simplicity. And what I mean by simplicity is the narrative style of this is very much like evocative of like fairy tales and storytelling and like telling folk tales and that sort of thing. So it's in many ways quite straightforward, but even in its straightforwardness it has these beautiful metaphors and these beautiful turns of phrase. And as a physical book, it's just absolutely delightful. Every chapter starts with a little like heading illustration. There are stories told within it that are formatted like this, and they have a different font and that sort of thing. There's also these gorgeous full-page illustrations that really help bring it to life, and the narrative structure feels quite episodic in many ways, because it will be like, like when Minli meets the dragon, there is a task that has to be achieved, and then they do that, and then her and the dragon move on to the next thing, and but that episodic narrative, again, is very deliberate, and it really felt like it was drawing on this storytelling, and very much like a book that you would want to read with a child, because this episodic structure is perfect for like bedtime stories and that sort of thing. Like, sit down and read a portion with the child, and then the next day read the next portion and that sort of thing. I thought all of these magical ideas were so delightful. The characters I loved. Like, I really fell for like the dragon and Minli's friendship. I just thought it was wonderful. I don't know if Grace Lynn has written anything else, but if she has, I want to read it all, and I want to read it now, because masterful, beautiful, wonderful. After that, we changed genres completely, and I did the Ithrai Goch, which was, I did the geographical prompt to read a book by a Welsh author. I went for The Journey Through Wales and the Description of Wales by Gerald of Wales. Gerald of Wales was writing in the 1100s. This is sort of his description of this like journey he took around Wales. On the one hand, interesting to read, like this snapshot of a time, that sort of thing. On the other hand, very much of its time, So it was very much like, here's some casual racism, here's some casual homophobia, and very much had these interludes, which I liked to refer to as why women are terrible. So there were a number of anecdotes which are like nothing to do with his journey, where he's like, you know how women are awful? Let's discuss. With a timely anecdote about one woman being awful. And I was like, oh, Gerald. So yeah, it's kind of like the narrative form is that he took this journey around Wales. He's writing it down for, I think, the Archbishop of Canterbury. And so it's like split by the areas he was in, the tales he was told, as well as the journey he was having, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of like strange anecdotes, including, I bookmarked one, which I was just like, sure. An eagle is said to know the place where it can find its prey, but not the time. A raven knows the time, but not the place. And I was like, thanks, Gerald, really informative. So, like, I don't want to, like, completely bash this book, because, like, I went in knowing what it was going to be like. It is an interesting take on, like, a particular time. I found it really funny how much he hated Henry II. He was just like, that was a terrible king, blah, 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 blah. He has no appreciation for the church or anything, which was particularly interesting, because I do know that Henry II clashed a lot with Thomas Becket. bashy bashy, we know. So just like, it was like a very interesting look at this particular moment in time, and also this relationship between the English clergy and the Welsh people and clergy. Like, Gerald himself was Welsh, but like, he is writing this for the English archbishop. I don't know, it was an interesting study of the time. It's just, you do also have to acknowledge that there's going to be a lot of like a bit of terribleness towards women and people of colour and all that sort of stuff, and oh, you know, the Welsh are known for being degenerates and all this stuff, and I was just like, less of that, more of interesting topical stuff. I don't know. After that, I read Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. This fulfilled the geographical, there were two prompts where the geographical continent that they tied to was Africa, so I chose this one to fulfill both of those. This follows Ada, who sort of shares her body with these gods, so the narrative voices in this are a mix. Every now and then you get a little snippet that's narrated from Ada. There's another narrative point of view that uses like we pronouns, that's referring to like these gods. There's like two of them. There's another altar who develops slightly later, who narrates quite a lot of this text. This was such an interesting read, and it's one of those books where I was reading it and I was like, wow, this feels very powerful and raw and that sort of thing. There were things that I struggled with, and I had a really interesting conversation with my friend about it afterwards, because we were talking about, like, for example, sometimes I felt a bit disconnected from Ada, because you only rarely hear Ada's voice, you're namely getting the voice of the altars. Sometimes I was like, I don't really know who Ada is. And there were other altars that I kind of would have wished that we got a bit more information, like a bit more narrative from their point of view as well, because I was like, they're mentioned, but again, I don't really understand them. And some of these processes and stuff didn't always feel like very linear. It felt a bit like, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, now this is the thing that's happening. But I had this really interesting conversation with my friend where we were like, we're coming in and we're trying to like impose this linear narrative structure on these lived experiences, which are so messy. Like, gender is messy, trauma is messy, life is messy. It doesn't make sense to come into this text and be like, I want you to follow a linear structure and I want to connect to X, X, and Y, you know, like, that doesn't relate to how life is, that doesn't relate to how your experience of living is, and that doesn't relate to like how like processing trauma goes and that sort of thing. So this is one of those books where I was like, I can't say that it was a flawless book for me. Like, there were aspects that I was like, oh, I don't really know how I feel about this thing, blah, blah, blah. But I think it was just, like, the exploration of queerness, of gender, of neurodivergency, of spirituality. All of these things were so interesting. It's kind of one of those books where I, like, read it and I was like, this is going to be in my brain for a bit. I'm going to have to, like, sit with it and, like, process and that sort of thing. I just thought it was unlike anything else I've ever read. I really want to read everything else that Akwaeke Emezi has written, and I just had a really interesting time, and it's made me think a lot, and I think it's going to stay with me quite a lot. So, like, you know, a book doesn't have to be like, you walk away from it and be like, flawless, I had no conflicting feelings about this book. Sometimes it's like, I kind of have conflicting feelings, but I kind of feel like I'm supposed to have conflicting feelings because I kind of feel like I'm supposed to be sitting with these things and be like, how much of this is like this versus this and all this stuff. I don't know. It's one of those books that I'm like, summarising the plot is kind of hard, summarising my feeling is kind of hard, but I'm like super glad I read it, and now I want to go and read. Specifically, I want to read Pet, because I've heard that some of the sort of narrative structure, again, feels a little bit oral storytelling-like, which is something I really like. So, yeah, definitely an author I'm going to explore more, and definitely an author that I'm thankful that many people recommended to me. The final book I read was Dragon Pearl by Yoon Lee, which fulfilled prompts of something to do with space. I don't remember if it fulfilled any other prompts. I'm sorry. I will link my TBR video down below, so if you'd like to know the actual prompts these relate to, I did talk about them there. I just have a brain of a sieve. This follows 13-year-old Min, who is from a family of fox spirits. She lives on this planet that is very, very poor. Her older brother has joined the Space Force, But one day an inspector comes to their house and tells them that he's defected and he's gone, he's deserted and he's gone to try and find the dragon pearl. And Min does not think this sounds like her brother, so she sort of like sets off to go in and like investigate what's happened. I really enjoyed like a lot of the like elements of this universe. Like, as well as Min's family being fox spirits, there are also other supernaturals. So there's dragons and there's tigers, I think, oh, and there's goblins. And that was all really interesting to sort of like discover more about these different creatures and the different powers they have. I think one tiny niggle I had with this was occasionally the pacing, because we had some bits which were like really like fast-paced, blah, and then we had some bits where like everything slowed down quite a bit. I don't know. Just occasionally the pacing was a little off for me, and I can't really put my finger explicitly on why, but I don't know. Occasionally I was just like, oh, I feel like we've been doing this for a while versus that. But I really enjoyed like following Min as she has to sort of like, essentially she goes undercover in Space Force. I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's something we would expect to happen. And I liked like the friendships and that sort of thing. Also really liked how like normalized like being non-binary and stuff in this is. So in the Space Force, you have these little like insignia on people that not only tell you their rank, but they also tell you like the pronouns they'd like you to use and stuff like that. There were a lot of elements of stuff like that like weaved in, and I just really liked how like casually it was done. It was just part of the world building, and I was like, yes, this makes total sense. That's like a very easy solution to something like that. You're already showing your insignia on you, why wouldn't you also have your pronouns? So there were so many elements like that which were really fab, weaving in like these mythological creatures and stuff into this like sci-fi setting. Yeah, there was a lot to do with like the actual like sci-fi itself. Is like I really liked that as like a setting and that sort of thing. Occasionally, Min's fox powers, I think, ever so slightly took away from some of the sense of danger for me. It kind of occasionally felt a little bit like anytime Min was in danger, I didn't entirely feel a sense of danger, because I was like, she's usually able to use these powers in some way to like get her out of it, whether that's to like charm people or like transform herself and stuff. I don't know. Occasionally the strength of her powers slightly took away from some of the sense of danger for me, because I was like, well, even if she gets caught, like, she's going to charm her way out of it, she'll be fine, that sort of a thing. I don't think that's necessarily something that would bother the target age range for this book. Like, I am reading a middle grade book as an adult, so I'm like coming in with like adult consciousness critiques, whereas I am aware that like this is geared towards like middle grade readers. And I think if you're reading this as a middle grade reader, like, it's just like a really fun sci-fi romp. I had a fun time, and I'm definitely interested in reading some of Yoon Lee's other works. I know that he did Nine Fox Gambit or something, I don't know, but would read more of that author. But yes, on the whole, this has been a really fun readathon. I've had a really great time. I know that only 2 of these were Dragon Book related, but that's because I have no other Dragon books in my possession right now. But I've definitely been really enjoying watching other people's videos and getting recommendations of Dragon books off of them, so definitely something to explore going forward again. I would love to know if you have read any of these, do you have thoughts on them? If you took part in DraconAthon, what did you read? / what was your like highlight standout read? That would be really interesting. / also, did you watch anything? Because I keep needing to watch Dragon Prince on Netflix and I just haven't done it yet. But yes, that's everything I wanted to talk about this time. I would love to know any of your thoughts in the comments down below. Otherwise, I will see you next time for something different.